an African, can I see yeah? If you're an African, can I hear ooh? Africa! Can I hear Africa? Africa! Thank you so much. There is no better place to celebrate Gender Day than in African Pavilion because this is our home, right? And African women, civil society, we have a right to own and claim African Union, right? So thank you so much for joining us today for this celebration. We will be together for 1 hour. And we are not just joined here by the women who are in this COP, because we do know not all African women have the same privilege to be in the space like this. So we will be inviting other Africans, especially women, who are not here to share their voices. I think tech team, can we start with a video, the first one?
They said there's interpretation. Can people get headsets?
All right. For those who are not speaking English like me, kindly get a headset because... Huh? All right. Can we get a headset, tech team? Where can we find headset for translation? Yes. We are waiting for 1 minute for translation devices because cannot be Africa without diversities of languages, right? Say yes to language justice. Yes, please.
I can't read it. Where's Maria? Maria is here. Maria. Give it to us. French one. Okay. And Maria can. We are here for you. We're here for you. Really? Yes.
What do we want? Don't get in my voice. I think I've been up and down today. Okay, so for those who doesn't know the song, it's a Kiswahili song from Tanzania. And the words are, Wamama msilale, women do not sleep. The fight continues. So we've been rehearsing this for the whole last year, and my sisters and mothers and friends and colleagues, we will jump into and get along as it starts. Zukiswa, all right? Wamama msilale, lale, lale, wamama msilale, bado mapamba. Please stand up. You don't fight when you're sitting down. Wamama msilale, lale, lale, wamama msilale, bado mapamba. Na sisi hatulali, lali, la. Na sisi hatulali, bado mapambano. Wamama msilale, lale, la. Wamama msilale, bado mapambano. Na sisi hatulali, lali, lali. Na sisi hatulali, bado mapambano, 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 bado mapambano, mapambano. Yeah! Thank you, my French sister. Shall I continue? Mapamba. Mapambano, bado mapambano. Wamama msilale, lale, lale. Wamama msilale, bado mapambano. Wamama msilale, lale lale, wamama msilale, bado mapamba, na sisi hatulali, lali la, na sisi hatulali, bado mapamba, mapambano, mapambano, bado. Yeah! Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Sikizo.
Yeah! African women, oh yeah! All right, so as I said, we'll be joined by voices from across the continent. So I'd like to welcome you to watch your screen so that we can hear the journey that started a month ago to get us all here. So kindly take team.
As we head to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, more than 170 African civil society organizations are participating in the African Climate Caravans, which are traveling across 28 countries on the African continent to show the real impacts of climate change on people's daily lives and to demand more climate justice. Although they are the least responsible for this climate crisis, African people are among the most affected, with droughts, floods, displacements of populations, loss of livelihoods, food insecurity, conflicts over water resources, and land for grazing cattle are problems that are part of their daily lives. Among these populations, it's women and girls who suffer the greatest impact in their daily lives. They face longer journeys to fetch water and firewood, and therefore greater exposure to the risk of sexual attacks and assaults. Loss of income from agriculture, which is their main source of income. Food crises that force many girls out of school and into early marriage. In addition, they have difficulty accessing credit and land ownership. They are often excluded from decision-making and climate negotiation processes and have difficulty gaining access to training and technology. To make their voices count and their demands heard, women and girls joined massively the African Climate Caravans. They mobilized, walked, and debated in more than 28 countries. They explained the impacts of climate change on their lives and how they cope through farmers' alliances and the sharing of know-how in agroecology. They made themselves heard to decision makers gathered in Kinshasa at the pre-COP and in Dakar at the Climate Change Summit. They demanded equal representation of men and women and young girls in decision-making bodies related to climate change, whether at national or international levels. Protection of natural environments, especially water resources, to reduce the workload of women and girls and protect the future. An agroecological transition that cares as much for ecosystems as for farming communities. They asked international donors to finance more and better the adaptation of the most affected populations through increasing grants rather than loans that put future generations in debt. A women's delegation will be present at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh to represent the interests, aspirations, and ideas of African women in the fight against climate change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now those are the voices from across the continent. But also we had an opportunity to meet as African Feminist Task Force. And some of us has a message for us as well. Tech team? Tech team, we are waiting.
As we head to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, more than 170 African civil society organizations are participating in the African Climate Caravans, which are traveling across 28 countries on the African continent to show the real impacts of climate change.
Tech team, we don't want that video. We need another one. In the meantime,
as we head to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh
in the meantime,
Egypt, more than 170 African civil society organizations are participating in the African Climate Caravans, which are traveling across 28 countries on the African continent to show the real impacts of climate change.
So just to start us off, potentially we get to hear the voices of African women
although they are the least
have recorded taking their time to share
African
their message from across the continent. But to open this session
with droughts, floods, displacements of populations, loss of livelihoods, food insecurity, conflicts over water resources, and land for grazing cattle are problems that are part of
if you
their
can
daily
put
lives.
a stop, please,
Among
as we
these
start the
populations,
event.
it's women and girls who suffer the greatest impact in their daily lives.
All right. Thank you so much. We hope we'll have time to hear the voices, inspiring and exciting voices from across the continent who have taken their time to share their passionate, powerful voices in here in COP. So to start us off, it's important for us to know why we are here. And who are we? Yes, we know we are African women. We know that, right? And we know we belong here. We know that too, right? But specifically, why in this COP27? So to do that, I would like to welcome my senior, our mother, Priscilla. Can you give it up to Priscilla? As we do in Nigeria, can we say Igwe? All right, Priscilla, kindly welcome all these amazing women to this space.
African woman, oh yeah. African woman, oh yeah. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want? When do we want it? Good evening, my sisters, brothers, because we also have brothers from across the continent and our friends from across the world. The journey of the African Task Force started a long time ago, but for this year, we decided that we must mobilize ourselves as a continent and not working in silos. Because for a very long time, most of us has been doing incredible work. But to be fair to us, most of the times we operate as individuals organizations. So this year we decided that instead of working in silos, we need to work together. So January this year, precisely, we started mobilizing across the whole continent. And we have over 170 feminist organizations from the grassroots to the national to the regional. As we are gathered here, several of us have come from different parts of Africa to be here. And so we decided to organize among ourselves. And the first outing we had was in Bonn in June. So in June, we had a task force that were able to develop our messages. It means that we have 7 key messages that we wanted the world to know, that enough of the climate impacts on African continent. And so in Bonn, we had side events and we engaged with the world leaders, including our leaders from the continent, to present our demands to them. We did not stop at that. We had several side events engaging. We came back and we saw that there was the need for us to strategize again while we come to COP27. And coming to COP27, we wanted to come powerfully. And since we came, we have been making a lot of interventions at different levels presenting our issues. And so here, before we came here, we had a meeting, we had a training with our negotiators in Accra. And we have another feminist movement in Namibia, where we have been able to articulate the issues that we wanted to present at this side event. And so we organize and mobilize that when we come here, there's the need for us to present our demands to the African continent, but also to the world. And so we also decided that for us to do this, we wanted to host this event at our own house, which is the African Union, because there is no better place for us to do it than to host it here. We have invited all of you to join us as we move on through this journey, because we believe that standing in our power as African women and girls, we can change the narratives. Enough of the suffering of the African women, because climate change is impacting on us from the grassroots to the regional level to the global level. But who are the people that are mostly impacted? Are the African women. So we need to change that narrative. And we don't want anybody to change it for us. We are taking this course within ourselves, and this is just the beginning. We are going to continue to mobilize from now, from the grassroots, come COP28. We are going to stomp COP28 more strongly than we are here, because the voices from the grassroots are going to be at COP27, and we must be heard. And that is the story that we're here. So over to you, my sister, Mishi.
Igwe, can we hear hello? Happy Gender Day. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for really giving us a history of African Feminist Task Force. And I cannot close this subsection without also thanking Women and Gender Constituency, because it was Women and Gender Constituency which really dedicate resources, open up all the spaces for African women to organize. And as African women, I think I can speak on behalf of all of you that we have honored that invitation, right? Because it's one thing to be given a space, it's another thing to own it, it's another thing to make the most out of it. And I think our sisters from Asia and from Latin America, you have a lot to learn on how African Feminists has organized this year. So thank you to Women and Gender Constituency for giving us space to organize and support most of us to come here. So without further ado, Priscilla did mention that we had demands which have been co-created by and with African women themselves. There is no better person to talk about this demand than our young feminist. So Zainab, kindly come and share with us the top line. We don't want stories and reading. We want you to tell us what are these demands and why do they matter, right? Can we bring Zainab with all the yeah?
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking our time to join us today. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So we, like everyone has said, we did come forward and try to come up with a set of demands, collective demands that we feel are very peculiar to the African continent and that affect women and girls in Africa specifically. And we came up with 27-point demands that focus on 6 core topics and core areas. And the very first one, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate with, whether those in the African continent or beyond, is that we did ask for the inclusion of women and young people in national and UNFCCC decision-making process. It is unfortunate that even at this COP27, we have seen, for instance, the picture that is going around for the World Leaders Day, where there are about 117 leaders and less than 7 or thereabout were women. So these are the kind of happenings that, you know, made us think about such representation, the importance of meaningful, inclusive representation of women and girls of the African descent in decision-making processes of the UNFCCC. And then secondly, we demanded for a just and equitable transition from fossil fuels. We've heard a lot of English, we've heard a lot of narrative around moving, shifting, facing down coal and thereabout. All we are asking for is a just transition, a transition that focuses and takes the human right needs of the people at the center, at the forefront of all decision making and negotiations. And then thirdly, we did demand for the provision of adequate, accessible, affordable, flexible, and human rights-centered finance as a matter of justice and equity. It is one thing to hear all the pledges, 100 million, 100 billion. It is another thing for it to get to the grassroots, to the local communities, to the women and girls in Africa that actually need it. It's another thing for it to be accessible, to get to those people. And so that is why we thought it was important to have adequate, accessible, affordable, human rights-centered finance. We then move on to agriculture and land rights. There is no talking about Africa without touching on agriculture. We want agroecological models that bears the interest of the women and girls. We want a situation where African women and girls are able to own land. They have rights to their lands. Yes, we hear about women and girls being nurturers and having some closeness to the land, but when they do not own land, when their rights are subjugated, when patriarchal values overrides their own fundamental human right, then there's a problem. And then we also talked about sustainable, community-owned, and women-led technological solutions, because we believe that if there is no right approach to technology, to transfer of technology, to innovation, to implementation, to the use of technology in trying to curb our climate emissions or even adapting to it, then the already digital gap or technological gap that exists within the continent is only going to affect the women and girls worse. And then lastly, we thought there is no way that we can have all of these demands done without intersectionality and coherence with broader frameworks for sustainable development. We know that gender issues are cross-cutting. We know that even though we are African women and girls, we also come in our diversities. We know that there are different contexts, different ways in which some of this climate impacts affect each and every one of us, and we then emphasize on the importance of having intersectionality and making sure it's cross-cutting in all our solutions, down from sexual reproductive health and rights to making sure that we can access finance, like I mentioned, and thereabout. And this is just me trying to summarize it quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to ask you something, right? You have heard those stories when they say, African young girl cannot lead. You have heard that, right? Right? So I want you today to tell them you are a liar, right? African girl cannot lead. African women cannot lead. Young girl cannot lead. Young girl cannot lead. All right, I heard they have heard that, right? They are lying, because we have seen a testimony of how a young girl can articulate technically these demands. But now I'm told the video is ready, and let's see and hear what other African feminists from across the continent are saying. Tech team. I think we should have been ourselves in that room, right? It could have been better, ne? All right. We are giving them one. Okay, here it is. It's muted.
Critical in my feminism because it's I belong and I pledge my allegiance to African Feminist Charter of Principle. One is identity, and two is a claiming back the power, and three is an ideology. And I think the ideology part is critical in my feminism because it's where now you place the nuance, the history, the theories, and claiming the power that we are not just women, we are women who have defined all. Feminism to me is the tool and lens through which I see the world.
For African feminists, our work on gender and climate touches on our lives in a very deep and unique way. One true and radical form of feminism that we've seen in Africa is a very ecofeminist approach, a very important ideology that places the well-being of women and the well-being of nature as one. The ecofeminist way was the way of life before colonization. African women, pastoral women, for instance, women who lived in forests, indigenous women, women who lived next to water bodies, they did use these resources, but they didn't do it in an extractive a manner as we're seeing now. And they organized and they made sure that they replenished these resources.
All the government delegates who are going into COP, they ought to understand we are losing hope. And they need to restore that hope, not just for themselves, but to restore hope for the next generation.
I'm currently at the convergence of youth and women, and I think it's really important that we have inclusive spaces that includes girls and women's voices. We are not, all blocked up into just one, gender. We have different lived experiences and intersectional experiences, and that means that it's really important to hear inputs and voices from each of these groups. So really, we want to remove that idea of the burden of hope on young people and really put power back in their hands, bringing them in conversation, actively and intentionally letting them participate in these conversations, learning about the process.
As a young African woman negotiator, the key demands for African and African women mainly is the establishment of a stand-alone financial facility for lost.
Tech team. You don't want to see what happens when African women get angry, man. Let me go find out what's happening with the tech.
All right. Seems technology today is not working for African women. But African women is always plan A to plan, and from plan B to plan. All right, you gotta do this, right? So allow me now to welcome, as we hear this word, this is just a testimony that this work has not started here. Because there are people who are imagining that all of a sudden we just get flight ticket and to come here. But this video and all that we have documented, it was a testimony that we are living climate struggles. We are doing the work in everyday life, right? Not just here, but in our communities, but also not just here in our nationals and capitals, and we are engaging and mobilizing and organizing. So allow me now to welcome Faith to speak for 1 minute about African Women's Solution. Okay, I'm told the video is ready, but Faith, kindly be on standby. We cannot hear.
We're talking about people having low yield in the agricultural products and farmers having to deal with the trauma and the mental health issues. We're talking about economic and non-economic losses. So we need a stand-alone financial facility that will deal with loss and damage on the continent, especially for African women. We look at the whole patriarchal system. You have men actually benefiting from the insurance system, while women are the ones actually working on farms and doing the agricultural work. And sometimes the social cultural norms, like women can swim or they can climb trees when we have sea level rise or flooding. So you see, the impacts on men and women are different. So we need to take into account gender vulnerabilities and make sure to mainstream gender in every aspect of loss and damage.
Donc, le problème dans les modèles financiers qui n'intègrent pas les femmes pose beaucoup de problèmes. Parce qu'on ne peut pas faire des investissements dans un pays où la majorité, c'est des femmes, et les investissements n'arrivent pas au niveau des femmes. Donc c'est un problème de justice sociale. On dit toujours pour marcher juste, doit marcher sur ses deux pieds. Donc pour le climat, on est tous d'accord que les femmes présentent beaucoup plus de vulnérabilité. Donc parce que les projets sont là pour le court terme, 4 ans, 5 ans. Ils ne font pas des choses structurantes et améliorer la situation des femmes impactées par le climat.
When it comes to funding the feminist movement, our feminist approaches must be appreciated, and our funding should mimic these important approaches. That way will build legitimacy. The communities will trust that the work that they're doing is for their own good.
We need to invest a lot of energy in making sure that our adaptation plans, like they are really designed to transform the position and alter relations of power. Equally, we need to have the same investment and engagement in mitigation to make sure they do the same.
We've seen a lot of organizing that's being done by women in particular. And so the organizing that is done is actually about survival, and the resistance we are also seeing from Africa is also about us finding space in a system that has already been set. It's important for us to think about how emancipation of women would also lead to emancipation of, environment.
Premiumbeat.com.
Thank you. Final tech team delivered. Can we clap for tech team? All right, those are the voices of African feminists, and I think a majority of them are here, right? If you're in that video, can you stand up so that we can clap for you? All right, and me included. Oh, Salimata just get the translation. Can we clap for her? All right, so as I said, today was supposed to be a celebration of African women in our Africanness, right? And we didn't want to have panels and speeches, rather than we just wanted to have a conversation, but after the conversation for us to interact, enjoy and network, because it's a gender day in African Pavilion. So I would like to welcome Faith to speak for 2-3 minutes on what African women are doing, because we're just coming from Gender Just Climate Solution, and we do know women have solution already, right? We know that. So there is no more excuses that we don't know how Gender Just Climate Solution look like, because we have evidence, and we just have a lot of publication there. I think we should leave some for African Union and African Negotiator, right? So that we can hold them accountable. So Faith, just tell us a little bit of the work that has been done by African women, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague to do interactive session for us to dance, sing, enjoy, and grab some drinks. All right, Faith.
Mishi, I like your energy. I mean, it's at the end of the day, but it feels like the day has just begun for you. Okay, so I'm obviously not going to be able to share everything that we are doing as African women. There's a lot of organizing, like you have already seen. There's a lot of publications that have been developed. There's a lot that has been shared from the day that we all arrived here. And it's really about us being able to take back our power, to be able to position ourselves as individuals that can offer solutions to technical discussions, to everyday issues. So we just wanted to use this opportunity to share about some of the things that have been ongoing. Obviously, we hope that later on when we begin to interact, we will share more about what each of us are doing in our different spaces. But just to say that, like we all know, about the African Feminist Task Force. Woo! So that's really one great initiative that has been able to bring all of us together, and we can acknowledge that we have all benefited from it. And then the other has been the Africa Feminist Convening. I don't know how many of us were in Ghana. How many of us were in Ghana? Yes. The Africa Feminist Convening was also another one that has contributed towards our organizing. And then there's the Feminist Corp as well, that was in Namibia. Woo! To those of you that were in Namibia. And then there was also the Africa Climate Caravan, which happened across 28 countries. I think we are also aware of that. And then there was also there's also been capacity building initiatives. So we have the Africa Women Leadership Institute on Climate Justice, but also the Africa Feminist Climate Justice Academy. And this list is not limited in terms of what we are doing. We hope that we can all be able to share about all these initiatives that we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we welcome all of you African women to connect, to share the work that you are doing, because this is the space to build partnership, right? This is the space to stand in solidarity, but also this is space to amplify the work that we are doing, to amplify our voices, to find funding, to find partnership, to find comradeship. This is the space, and that's why we are here, because COP27 will end in a week. But our struggle continue, right? Our fight continue, our work continue, and we need to strategize on how we take our work forward. So with that, I think we have concluded our talking session. We are in the presence of a lot of sisters, partners who really came to stand in solidarity with us from UNDP, from African government. We have negotiators here. But today is a civil society day, and this is a celebration. So to celebrate, I would like to hand it to my colleague and comrade, Zukiswa, to bring some energy for us to dance, connect, eat, drink, as we end the Gender Day.
Thank you so much. Happy Gender Day, African woman. So firstly, I'd like to start by saying, as someone who was new to the process of the African Feminist Task Force, I was reminded and affirmed that it's really not easy to build movements. It's really not easy to sustain organizing, especially the kind that is envisioned by the African Feminist Task Force, right? Think globally, strategize regionally, and act locally. I think we take it for granted the extent to which there are so many barriers for us to organize, and organize in ways that are as strong enough as the kind of systemic barriers we face. So I do want to have all of us in the room give a round of applause to what the African Feminist Task Force has tried to model for us in terms of how we can think through this kind of sustained organizing. So a big round of applause and congratulations to the African Feminist Task Force, who, by the way, have, can I have some ululating Africans? What's this thing? What is this thing? My mom always jokes and says that our generation of girls won't get married. I mean, not that we care, but she says we don't know how to sing traditional songs at weddings. We don't know how to ululate. We don't know how to cook on 3-foot pots. But hey, we are attending Conference of Parties even in our young age. So that's a benefit. Yes. So anyway, I do want to just quickly, my job is only to do a facilitated sort of like discussion, but those who know me by now, yeah. So I'm going to ask Maria to come again. It is a beautiful celebratory song of African women's and women in general resilience, which basically translates to say that when it comes to women, we don't sleep until we get the job done. And isn't that just so true? So I'm going to do this. Hear me, so we can sing together, okay? So the lyrics say we're going to give her a chance. She leads. She's going to start the first round, right? And it says, excuse my pronunciation, we have millions of languages in this beautiful continent of ours. Wamama msilale, lale lale, wamama msilale, patoma pambano. And then we go Are you still with me? Are you still with me? We go, after she says the first round alone, we go in really simple. Nasisi hatu lale, 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 nasisi hatu lale, badoma pambano. Right? So it's nasisi hatu lale, 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 nasisi hatu lale, badoma pamban. Nasisi hatu lale, 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 nasisi hatu lale, badoma pambano, ma pambano, ma pambano, badoma pambano, ma pambano. Are we together? We're doing this thing. So she's going to open the song. We just clap as she's doing the first paragraph. After she says, Badema Pambano, we go in. Nasi Siba Tuhale. All right. Rise, everybody. Everybody rise. We are celebrating African women on this Gender Day. Maria, let's go.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. Wamamam sila le la le la le wamamam sila le badoma pambano si hatu lali 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 nasi si hatu lali badoma pamba wamamam sila le la le la le wamamam sila le badoma pambano nasi si hatu lali 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 nasisi atulali bado mapambano 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 bado mapambano 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 bado mapambano 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 bado mapamba wamama msilale lale lale wamama msilale bado mapambano sisi hatulali lali lali na sisi hatulali bado mapambano 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 bado mapambano 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 bado mapambano mapambano mapambano
Solidarité avec les femmes du monde entier. 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 Solidarité avec les femmes. Wamam sisi lale, lale la. Wamam
bado mapamba na sisi hatulali lali lali na sisi hatulali bado mapamba wamambano mapambano bado mapamba mapambano mapambano bado mapambano 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 bado mapambano 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 bado map asanteni sana. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Hey. Yeah, man. Na sisi hatulale. Lale la. Na sisi hatulale. Bado mapambano, mapambano, mapambano. Bado mapambano. Na sisi hatulale. Lale la. Na sisi hatulale. Bado mapambano, mapambano, mapambano. Bado mapambano, mapambano, mapambano. Bado mapambano, mapambano. Can I get ululations? Ululations. Ria, 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 ria. Woo! Are you feeling the African feminist, African woman, African girl vibes on this Gender Day are saying that, look, it's my first COP ever. And it didn't take me long enough to see how it is civil society, women's organizing that save these 2 weeks from being a complete waste of state resources from our various countries. Because truly, it is often in these rooms. Am I not supposed to say that? It's the truth, you know? And so I really hope the negotiators in the room, the negotiators that we engage with, are also drawing the kinds of inspiration to be a little bit more courageous and bold in what they demand from their equivalents at the state level, right? Because when we talk about something like loss and damages and a finance facility, we're not asking for money that is not ours. We are just asking them to bring to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, right? It's not a matter about begging and saying, oh, rich, mighty North, please help us, poor, struggling Africans. But more to say, we are poor, struggling Africans because of you, right? When you say we are vulnerable to climate change, what you're not saying is that we've been made vulnerable because of you. But when you put it like, oh, what do we do about frontline communities who are vulnerable? It's almost like there's nothing and no one responsible for that vulnerability. And so when we make some of these demands, these bold, ambitious demands, as African women and feminists, it's precisely because we are contextualizing what they call the climate crisis, which is a result of their extractivism, their looting, and their greedy over hundreds and hundreds of years, capitalist principles, white supremacist logic. So we encourage our negotiators in this room and those who might heed this message to say they have a right to be bold. We are standing and fighting, waiting to really be led. We have the solutions. We have shown incredible leadership on this continent, and it's just about time that this leadership be amplified and taken with the seriousness that it deserves. Because as the beautiful Tanzanian song goes, women do not sleep. And indeed, we do fight until we win. Now, mine is to get a little bit of, words of encouragement to all of us, to the negotiators. What's that? What's that? Okay. To bring back into this room the kinds of hopes and visionary imagination demonstrated through the course of this year in organizing towards this moment back into the room, because we are losing hope. In this week 2 of COP27, what are the words that if any of us wants to leave in this room as we look to the last couple of days of COP27? Can I get hands? So, 1. Just to bring into the room any messages that you want to bring into this room about, where we are sitting, right? To negotiators, to each other. This is a space to bring any of that in, to reaffirm why it is we have come to this place, why it is we have organized a continent-wide agenda, because that thing is rare. And just anything else that you want to bring into the space as we close off this celebratory African Gender Day, but also recognizing there are challenges and limitations. And so it's 1, Mela, you said, 1, 2, I'm taking 4 hands. 3, 4, awesome.
I'm going to speak in French. nous, femmes africaines, en venant ici à la COP 27, nous aimerons avoir une solution parce que nous sommes très vulnérables au changement climatique. Ces changements climatiques qui nous apportent des problèmes, le manque d'eau, le manque d'électricité, le manque d'infrastructures, ce sont les femmes qui vont chercher l'eau en Afrique. Ce sont les femmes qui vont chercher du bois en Afrique. Ce sont des femmes qui courent quand il y a des inondations. En venant ici à la COP 27, nous espérons rentrer avec des solutions durables, n'est-ce pas? N'est-ce pas? Voilà le message que j'avais à donner. Justice climate. Justice climate. Gender climate. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. And I definitely know some of our sisters in the room caught that. I pointed at number 2 already. Who was my number 2?
Bonsoir tout le monde. J'aimerais tant parler l'anglais, mais bon, je ne peux pas parler anglais. Donc, puisque je pourrais m'exprimer en français, j'espère que vous me le permettrez. Donc, je suis très contente d'être là aujourd'hui. C'est pour juste dire que nous avons fait une caravane, une belle initiative en Afrique, dans 27 pays d'Afrique. Donc, cela a été nommé la caravane africaine du climat. On l'a tenue dans 27 pays d'Afrique, qui a été une belle initiative. Et en termes de résultats, on s'est senti dedans. Donc, on a vu sur le terrain des femmes qui ont montré leur engagement dans cette lutte. Des femmes qui se sont levées des femmes qui se sont montrées solidaires entre elles, des femmes qui se sont levées pour dire que il est temps qu'on se donne la main, il est temps qu'on mette fin à ces changements climatiques qui sont en train de changer en fait notre quotidien. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, les femmes sont les plus vulnérables face au changement climatique, ainsi que les jeunes. À travers ce fort plaidoyer qu'on a eu à faire sur le terrain, dans les 27 pays d'Afrique, ça a été des caravanes nationales. Hormis cela, nous avons tenu une caravane continentale qui s'est faite à Dakar. Et aussi, pendant cette caravane continentale, on a eu à rencontrer des autorités à qui on a remis ça, ce qu'on appelle la déclaration de la caravane africaine pour le climat. Donc, the Declaration of the African Caravan for Climate Justice. Donc, cela a été notre déclaration. Et cette déclaration montre tout notre engagement, toute notre passion à apporter notre aide aux communautés les plus vulnérables par rapport au changement climatique. Donc, je vous remercie et je suis très contente de faire partie de cette rencontre.
Merci beaucoup. Number 3, I already took hands. If there's time, I'll come back. Number 3, if you don't want your spot. 4. Okay, we are joined by our host country, a senior official who'd like to say a few words. And I will give you the floor once I who was number 3?
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Je viens par... Okay. Je voudrais avoir une recommandation à donner aux femmes africaines à cette occasion pour dire que nous devons aussi construire ensemble. One Africa, one voice. One Women Africa, one voice. Parce que dans l'avenir, nous devons construire aussi ensemble. Chacune est en train de poser une action quelque part. Et il faut que ces actions-là soient rassemblées pour que d'une seule femme africaine, nous pouvons parler d'une seule voix. Alors, je voudrais aussi dire quelque chose. Il y a un problème qui nous guette dans plusieurs pays africains. C'est-à-dire la femme n'a pas accès à la terre. Quand on n'a pas accès à la terre, où est-ce qu'on peut faire les plaidoyers? Où est-ce qu'on peut faire l'agriculture? Où est-ce qu'on peut planter, faire tout ce que nous pouvons faire? Où est-ce qu'on peut faire l'autonomisation économique de la femme africaine? C'est ça aussi le plus grand problème qui concerne l'accès à la terre, qui doit être un cheval de bataille pour toutes les femmes africaines. J'ajoute ma voix aux autres femmes du monde, de la communauté internationale qui nous viennent en aide, et je les remercie franchement pour l'appui qu'ils sont en train de nous apporter. Et nous sommes dans ce combat-là pour l'accès de la femme à la terre. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, tout le monde.
African women. African women. African women. That continent where the woman plows the soil. She plants the food that we eat. She takes care of the farmland, but then she does not own land. This is COP27, the COP of implementation. And the giants in the African woman have risen to say that we want action. We want our voices heard. We cannot work to protect the environment. But yet when we come to the COP, we don't have leadership represented from Africa. So we are rising up to say that enough is enough. We are here to act. We are not here to listen to promises. We are here to go for what will work and what will work down to the grassroots. African women! African women!
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just 1 minute, we're out of time from the host country.
Hello, I am from Egypt. I am a senator, Egyptian senator. I am a vice president of Women Caucus, and with me the president of Women Caucus at the Pan-African Parliament. So I am talking with all of your voices. I'm very happy to host you all in our land, in your second homeland. Welcome all in Egypt. We are working together. We are supporting the African woman at the parliament, at Egypt, at everywhere, at every piece of Egypt. We are together. We will work together. Actually, in Egypt, we don't have the problem of women owning land. I own my own land. So Egyptian women will support all the African women to start to work again, to have their rights, to empower women. I'm working in many projects in empowering women in Egypt, and I'm inviting all of you to share with me in Empowering Women project. I am dreaming to have a platform for the African woman, a platform where all African women can sell their products, can sell their clothes, can sell their handmade crafts. So support us, and we will work together to have an African platform for each woman, each African woman. Each African woman deserves to be strong, deserve to be independent. Let's work together. One Africa, one voice. Thank you.
One Africa, one Africa, one voice. So as I close, I wanted to invite my colleague, but she said no, so I'll do it. There was a similar process also trying to think through this type of organizing and this eco-feminist approach. And a beautiful, organic manifesto of sorts came out from one of the convenings with one of our partners, Femnet. And I would like to read it out to you. It's sort of like a declaration as we close. So a Pan-African Eco-Feminist Manifesto. We are indigenous. We are deeply rooted, and we are eco-feminists. We give ourselves permission to dream, to dismantle power, with hope in our hearts for a different future, we are able to build. Collectively and one with nature, our power shines forth. We want solidarity and we want power. The cool breeze is who we are. The ones who work towards equitable and sustainable nature practices. We are alive and we are that which gives life. We are African women working to defend the environment. We cannot keep bleeding for them to become rich. We are who we are. We are feminist power. We are Africa. An Africa that blossoms with hope and oozes sparkles for an eco-feminist, pan-African future. Ecofeminism means women's roots, and women's rights are nature's rights. Fed up with climate change, we are thirsty for climate justice. Our fight is to decolonize. Our struggles, our dreams, they are valid. There is so much hope for the African woman when we all stand together, united. Aluta! 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 And that was the Pan-Africanist Manifesto, developed by a wonderful bunch of feminists over a 3-day process. Happy, happy Gender Day. Happy, happy African Gender Day. Let us continue to stand in our power. African women, standing in our power. African women, Nasisi hatulale, lale, lale, Nasisi hatulale.
Yes, come. Come. You're coming with me. Come. Lali. Nasisi hatulale, badoni. Wamama msila.